Chairman Lummis, the research community often cites sustained growth and predictable funding as being among their top priorities. Not surprisingly, private industry cites predictability as one of its top priorities, and a necessity if we really want the United States to continue to be a world leader in technology and innovation. Dr. Hemminger's testimony specifically refers to the innovation deficit that the United States is experiencing. And as I discussed in my opening statement, while I appreciate the majority's draft and its aims to improve the authorization of several important programs and activities carried out by the Office of Science, I have concerns about the draft's funding profile. It supports budget levels that are below research inflation rates, so they are effectively cuts, and 9% below the bipartisan Senate appropriations mark for the Offices of Science. I am also concerned that the funding profile in this draft runs for only 2 years rather than a much longer time. I would prefer something like 5 years to give more certainty to the laboratories and those partners in the Office of Science. Dr. Hemminger, do you think that a short-term 2-year reauthorization that cuts the Office's budget provides the certainty and stability that the research community needs, and how does this help to increase the innovation deficit?
Thank you very much for that question. You know, I think that it's widely recognized that predominant programs that are run by the Office of Science, particularly the Office of Basic Energy Sciences, are addressing long-term questions and long-term issues. These are not science questions that one can expect answers to in very short periods of time, and I think that the only way that a short-term reauthorization works is with the expectation that the U.S. government isn't going to go out of business and fall off a cliff and so on. And so you know, I think it certainly would be advantageous to have a longer reauthorization bill, and I think this is particularly a problem or an issue with respect to the large science facilities. In my written testimony, I pointed out the issue of the international competition with respect to our global leadership for X-ray light sources and other facilities, and these are really major long-term projects that require stability in terms of funding and authorization. I would encourage the committee to support that. Thank you,
Dr. Hemminger. Dr. Simon, what are your thoughts on funding and length of funding or length of authorization?
As I said in my opening statement, the national laboratories have long-term projects in research and have large-scale facilities that require a predictable continued operation. It is very difficult in both instances to have a very highly variable budget that changes from year to year and that is not predictable. With respect to large facilities, the issue is that ongoing upgrades plans may need to have postponed at an increased cost to the taxpayer later on. With respect to research projects, the high variability in funding makes it very difficult to plan personnel. And we're talking here about highly critical talent that if junior researchers, if postdocs see that there's uncertainty about funding, about the longevity of a project, they will go elsewhere and leave the national lab and weaken our innovation ecosystem. Thank you.
And Dr. Simon, could you talk a little bit about some of the other federal agencies and private sector users that you have at Lawrence Berkeley? We have heard that DOE labs are using or having other agencies like NIH, NSF, and NASA use their laboratories, and I know from touring LBL that there are private sector partnerships as well. Can you talk about who those users are and how they are benefiting the technology transfer to the private market?
Thank you for the question. So let me first talk about other federal agencies. The national user facilities that are operated by the Office of Science are available to all researchers, that is university national labs, and industry researchers. So we have, for example, at the Advanced Light Source in Berkeley, a large number of researchers funded by NIH. These are biologists who are interested in determining the structures of large biomolecules of proteins. There are significant examples of major progress that has been obtained using the DOE facilities. For example, a research project that just completed a couple of months ago is looking at the structure of the influenza of the flu virus. As you know, the viruses are mutating rapidly, and there's still a quest for finding a common vaccine that would address all these flu viruses. So in order to understand this, one has to look at the structure. There's a major project that was completed that identified, that was NIH funded, that used VLS to identify the structure of many of these viruses. With respect to NASA, I could mention an example of a collaboration between the Department of Energy, the Office of High Energy Physics, with NASA to collaborate on an astrophysics project called the Planck Project, which is an exploration of the cosmic microwave background radiation, where both agencies have worked together, and the Supercomputing Center, NERSC, in Berkeley is actually the data repository for the Planck data.
Thank you. And Dr. Simon, I've gone over
yes,
on my time.
I haven't gotten to industry, but I'll be happy
yes,
to answer that
and
later.
hopefully we can get back to that. He's so passionate. He has so much to talk about, Chair. Thank you. Dr. Simon, could you complete your remarks from earlier about private industry partners that your laboratory has been working with, and how you see their work transferring out to the private sector and creating jobs, helping the economy, making us more energy independent?
Thank you for the question. I would like to follow up on this. Yes, there are, of course, several individual collaborations of our laboratory with private industry. There are the standard ways of transferring technology through licensing and intellectual property right agreements. I could mention a couple of exciting examples. Dr. Dehmer mentioned previously the nanoscience centers. We now have 10 years later the first examples of technology coming out of the nanoscience centers that's actually used in industry in terms of small company startups that are using very innovative ideas to build new products. I can mention a small company that has just started, Heliotrope, that is using a nano coating on windows that makes windows electrochromic, so it can switch them on and off. In winter, you make the windows bright so sun can go in and heat stays inside. In summer, you switch in reverse, and this is by the flip of a switch. Of course, this is technology that is proven in the lab. It will take years to make it a real product. But this is the path that we have from basic research at the lab to an actual innovation that could change maybe in 10 years or so how we build houses. More fundamentally, I think I would mention two other things. One area is so-called work for others. The labs engage in projects that are funded by industry. It's a very important element because it allows industry to work directly with us, sponsor work at the lab, and benefit from the investment that the Department of Energy has made. It would be very desirable if this work for other projects could be made a bit easier to implement, and maybe the labs would have authority to, in particular, sponsor small work for other projects quickly without DOE oversight. That's important because often we work with small companies that cannot wait for 8 or 9 months to get approval. Those companies need commitments from VCs or have other constraints, so speed is of the essence. A third area that I would like to mention is the use of the national user facilities. These are open to industry. Industry has worked with the national user facilities. As an example, the Advanced Light Source has a very long-term agreement with Sematech exploring extreme ultraviolet technology for its technology for future generation of chips. Large companies and consortia like Sematech know how to do this. I think what we need to do is find a way of getting small, medium-sized enterprises better access to our facilities, and again, reducing paperwork, making it easy and efficient, and possibly even providing support for small and medium-sized companies to access the facilities.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Simon.